So, on one hand, there is some truth that we know. On the other hand, we don't know all truth. Our truth is limited. So where is that limit? Where is that limit to the truth that we can know? For example, could we ever say that an entire culture is wrong about something? Wouldn't that be arrogant to say that an entire culture is wrong about something? Well, let's test that. Let's test that with different cultural views about the shape and the nature of the earth. Because over the centuries, many different cultures have had many different beliefs about the shape and the nature of the earth, right? Some cultures, like a Hellenistic culture, believed that the earth was being carried on the back of Atlas. Other cultures, like some Native American cultures, believed that the earth was being carried in the talons of a giant eagle. And ancient Babylonian culture believed that the earth was floating on a giant cosmic sea. Now, first of all, can all these different beliefs all be true at the same time? No, they're mutually exclusive. They can't all be true at the same time. So would it be arrogant to say one of these views, or maybe even several of these views, are going to turn out to be wrong? No, it's just a logical conclusion. If we admit that they can't all be true at the same time, then someone's going to end up being wrong here. One or all of these views will turn out to be wrong. Now, just because some Native American cultures believed that the earth was being carried in the talons of a giant eagle, just because they believed that didn't make it true. No, I mean, we're able to take satellites up into space and take pictures of the earth. You know, we're not seeing the eagle. You can take, we've taken space shuttles up with astronauts and they look back. You know, they're not seeing the eagle. You can travel to all parts of the globe, and there's no place where you're standing on the surface of the earth, you're squished because you're underneath the talon. I mean, I'm not trying to make fun of their view. My point is that today there are easy ways to test this claim. And so I think we can be confident, because of this evidence, we can be confident that they got that view wrong. I don't think it's arrogant to say that we know that that was wrong, that the earth is supported by this giant eagle. Now, certainly we could say that in an arrogant way. And that's not my intention here. We want to be careful not to say that someone else is wrong in an arrogant way, especially a deeply held cultural belief. We really want to be careful not to say that that they're wrong in an arrogant way. We should always be respectful of others. But it's not arrogant in and of itself to say that a culture got something wrong, just in general. But that's not very controversial, talking about different shape and nature of the earth, that the earth is supported by these different things. That's not very controversial. What if we look at a more controversial issue held by different cultures, different cultural views about God? Because over the millennia, different cultures have had many different views about God. Some believe that there are millions of gods. Some believe that there's only one God. Some believe that the entire universe is God, and still others believe that there's no God at all. Now, can all those different views of God all be true at the same time? No. You can't have millions of gods, and one God, and the universe is God, and there's no God all at the same time. So would it be fair to say that someone's going to end up being wrong here? Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I mean, it's just kind of a logical conclusion that if they can't all be right, someone's going to end up being wrong. But saying that some cultures will end up being wrong, theoretically, some cultures are going to be wrong, is very different than saying we know that a particular culture got their view of God wrong. We know that they were wrong. So this ultimately brings us to the question, can we know anything about God? Because if we can know something about God, then and a culture believes something opposite of that, then we know that they were wrong. If we can't know anything about God, then it would be arrogant to say that another culture got their view of God wrong, because that's beyond our limit to what we can know. We don't know that they were wrong. And so this is why it's so important to ask the question, can we know anything about God? Skip ahead. There we go. But it turns out that we run into problems yet again if we say that we can't know anything about God. And the first problem that we run into if we say that is that when someone says we can't know anything about God, they're actually claiming to know a lot about God. They're claiming to know a lot about God. Think about it. When someone says that we can't know anything about God, they're assuming that God has never spoken to us through any sort of prophet, like many religions claim, that God has never spoken to us through any sort of holy book, like the Bible claims for itself, and that God has never spoken to us through by visiting us in person, like Jesus of Nazareth claimed. So it turns out that if someone says we can't know anything about God, they're actually claiming to know a lot about God. They know that he has never tried to reach out to us and communicate with us in any sort of clear way. But the second problem is that if someone says we can't know anything about God, they're actually invalidating all the great scientists and all the great philosophers over the centuries who've claimed to have gained knowledge of God through science and through philosophy, through evidence. Ancient philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, more recently the philosopher Thomas Aquinas, or even more recently the modern philosopher William Lane Craig, they raise what's called a cosmological argument for the existence of God, an argument based on the origin of the universe. Then you have people like Anselm and Descartes and Leibniz who offer an ontological argument for God. That's an argument based on the very nature of existence. Then you have people, great thinkers like C.S. Lewis, Francis Schaeffer, and even the modern philosopher Alvin Plantinga, who offer an axiological argument for God. This is an argument based on moral law. And then you have many great scientific thinkers like Newton, Kepler, Boyle, Pascal, William Paley, and even their modern successors like Michael Behe, William Dembski, Stephen Meyer, and Guillermo Gonzalez, who offer teleological arguments for God. These are design arguments. And they claim that you can actually learn quite a bit about God through these different arguments. Now, at the moment, I'm not claiming that all of these arguments all are bulletproof and they win the day, that sort of thing. I'm not claiming that at the moment, anyway. Even if you think, well, I don't know if all these arguments are all that good, that's not my point. My point is that if you say that we can't know anything about God, you're claiming to have looked into all these different thinkers and all their different arguments such that you know that none of them give you any knowledge of God. So it turns out it's actually a huge knowledge claim to say that we can't know anything about God because it invalidates all these great thinkers and what they've said. So, and I would suggest looking into, I've provided resources there in the handout, I'd suggest looking into their arguments because actually, I think they actually do demonstrate that we can know a lot about God. But my point is that through these various examples, what I'm trying to point out is that we need to be careful not to accuse others of being arrogant simply because they claim to know the truth. We can know some truth. We've demonstrated that. We, in fact, can know enough truth that we can say that an entire culture got something wrong. And we can even, at least theoretically, know enough to know some things about God. And actually, those of you who've been to my presentations on the evidence for God, actually, I think we can actually know quite a bit about God through the evidence. So I think we can show that it's not arrogant to say that you know the truth.